In this video, I'm going to discuss how I talk to clients. I had a not so great thing happen to me recently when working on a piece of music with a client. And I'll get into that in a minute to kind of, prime you as to why I'm even talking about this subject at all. But before I do that, if you've been watching my tutorials week to week, hit subscribe if you haven't yet. It helps me a lot. And definitely hit that thumbs up icon. YouTube likes that for some reason. And if you haven't checked it out yet, swing on over to my Patreon. There's a link in the description below, and that's the best way to keep me making tutorials or music industry discussions like this one. Something happened to me recently in my professional life that's happened to me before and I'm sure will happen again. And that is, I wrote some music for a client and they were unhappy with it. As arrangers, we put a lot of ourselves into our own work. It's unavoidable. And in fact, I'll get into it a bit later, but that's one of the reasons people come to us to write music for them. But sometimes that backfires and we end up writing music that our client is very unhappy with. And so I have some strategies to avoid that problem and to kind of help us learn to cope with it. The further you get along in your career, the more numb you'll get to this. But it still hurts every single time it happens, and I think it's important for us to discuss strategies as to how to deal with that, or how to sort of frame it in our own minds so that it doesn't hurt so much when it happens. I can't think of a way to do this without dropping some names, but all of the best writers that I've been able to interact with have had this happen to them. One of my coolest gigs that I had in the last couple of years was because this happened to Patrick Williams, the late great Pat Williams. Needed to redo a chart for a session, and he asked me to do it because his health was declining, but also because I think he just didn't want to go through writing that same song in a different style for this client. And it wasn't because he didn't know what he was doing. It's Patrick Williams. So this happens to everyone. I had talked to John Clayton and who else have I talked to about this? I've heard Gordon Goodwin talk to ASMAC about this, which is a composer group that I attend frequently. And I've heard Kim Richmond talk about this. A lot of really great writers have talked about this, where they write a piece of music for a particular client and the client is unhappy with it. So let's talk about the main reason that causes that. So in order to understand why this happens, let's talk about what you're actually doing when you're writing an arrangement for a client. So this client, whether you're working with a vocalist or a music producer or a school ensemble or a professional ensemble, orchestra, choir, jazz band, whatever it is, when they're hiring you to write music for them, your job is to help them realize their vision for this piece. In my experience, 95% of the time that I've been hired, exact numbers, 95% of the time that I've been hired to write music, the client that's asking me to write this piece knows how they want the piece to sound when it's done. And it's my job, in order to take that vision and turn it into sheet music. And that's a really difficult process. So I recommend, first of all, asking lots and lots of questions. First at the onset of the project, and then as it goes on. Like as you get to writing, you might reach a part of your arrangement where you can go one direction or another direction. A lot of the times it helps to just ring up or write an email to your client and ask them what they would want to do. They'll understand that their own thumbprint is on it. Oftentimes, the people that you're working with don't know how to describe what they actually want. I've had clients talk to me about, well, on the verse, I want it to slow down. And on the bridge, I want it to really speed up. And as an arranger, that slow down and speed up are functions of tempo. But in reality, what the client really wants is a different texture. And so if they're asking for something that doesn't make a lot of sense to you, ask several follow-up questions. Or if it's appropriate, ask for the client to demonstrate what they want vocally. Sing their way through the section, humming what they want. A lot of times that will reveal what they actually meant when they couldn't describe it with words. Also, learn to be very gracious when you send a piece of music out if they come back to you with feedback. First of all, thank them for the opportunity for being able to write for them. In my experience, it's helpful to remind them that you want nothing more than to help them realize their vision musically. Even if you're a little bit off the mark, sometimes the tweaks that they need in order to really lock it in are incredibly easy to do to a piece that's already written. I had a client once who felt really, really distraught about a piece that I had written when they listened back to the demo. And it turned out that what they really wanted was for the entire piece to be about 4 clicks faster, which is such an easy change. Arranger to arranger, you know that that is an incredibly easy change to make. But to someone who doesn't understand written sheet music or the written note, that might seem like a fundamental change to the piece, and they worry that this late in the process it can't be changed. But even with that said, sometimes you get through the entire arrangement and they just don't like it. The person that you wrote it for is unhappy with what you wrote because it's so far away from what they intended. Now, usually this happens to me when I didn't ask enough questions early on. I think that most people, when they're hiring me to write an arrangement or a composition, are happy when they see all the things that they asked for get realized in the arrangement or composition. When they leave me to my own devices, that's when I can make choices that are really far away from what they meant. And it's not because my own choices are unmusical or uninformed. I actually have great confidence in my own abilities. It's just difficult to make that align with the client's vision, which is the most important thing. Anyone that's coming to you to write an arrangement is hiring you to do something that they themselves cannot do. And that's fine. I mean, we do this all the time. Whenever I put an ensemble together, I hire trombone players because I don't play trombone. I need to get somebody else who spent years learning how to do this in order to do that in my ensemble. So why should we think of it differently when somebody hires an arranger to write music specifically for their ensemble? It's the exact same thing. So they're hiring me for my expertise as a writer, which is something that they don't have, right? But they have musical intuition no matter what type of client they are. And remember that their intuition must be pretty good if they asked you to write their arrangement. Don't forget that. I've spent years writing for my own ensemble and developing my own sound, but what I've found is that typically when people hire me to write an arrangement for them, they're hiring me based on my reputation for consistently good writing. Probably also because of the price point of where I fit in among arrangers in Los Angeles. But then also, they're hiring me to realize their vision, not to realize my vision for something. So despite the fact that I have, multiple full-length albums released and a bunch of stuff on this YouTube channel that I've written recently, a lot of times the people that are actually hiring me to write arrangements for them aren't aware of my own style. And they honestly don't want something in my style. They want something in their style. So as long as I remember that while I'm writing, usually I can get through to something that they're happy with. Even with that said, sometimes they're fully unhappy. And it stinks when that happens, but remember that it's happened to everyone. If it hasn't happened to you yet, it will eventually. The more demanding clients you write for, the more likely they will be unhappy with something that you wrote. And that's just fine. It happens to every arranger at all levels of our industry. So, all right, that's my pep talk for this week. I'll be back with a tutorial soon. We're working on a new virtual big band thing. If we can get it done, I hope to put that out before Christmas. And until next time, goodbye.